Hello, everyone. Welcome into SEC Football Game Day. It is Week 5 action of SEC football. I am Blaine Gilmer. This is Southeastern 14, your home for daily SEC sports coverage. Not only do we have all the football action you could possibly want throughout the week, previews, predictions, betting tips, interviews with experts from different teams, all that kind of stuff throughout the week here as we lead up to game day. But we have this game day show each and every morning. We have Jake Crane from Crane & Company on the Daily Wire that is with us each Friday. So many things here, so many pieces of content. So check us out here, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Also, the network is growing, the channel is growing, the platform is growing. If your business wants to be part of that, hit up caroline.smith, southeastern14.com, and you can partner with us, be an MVP of the program here, and be an advertiser on the business. And then also CHOMPS, guys, check them out. You can get a great healthy snack, lots of protein, lots of different flavors. They've got venison, they got turkey, they got beef. My favorite is the beef jalapeno that they have over there. So check it out. You can get the information in the description below. But guys, let's go ahead and get right to it. We have lots of games, a full slate of SEC on SEC games. Finally, let's give you a little update. This is from the show that I do with Tavares King and Noshawn Marino here on the channel each Wednesday night. Let's look at the standings going in. So you see the SEC East standings coming into this one. You got a bunch of teams right there at no losses in the conference. Georgia, first road test is going to come with Auburn. And then you got Kentucky and Florida that'll be duking it out. We'll have a preview on that here. Missouri still undefeated in the conference. South Carolina looking to keep pace with all those teams by trying to win on the road with Tennessee. Tennessee yet to win a conference game, and so is Vanderbilt. And then you look over in the west side of things, and you've got, shockingly enough, at this point in the year, every team in the West has at least one loss, not in conference, but one loss in their record. Of course, LSU and Alabama, Texas A&M, all undefeated in the conference. Ole Miss is kind of with its back against the wall as it heads home to take on LSU. And then we have Auburn, Arkansas, both with a conference loss, and then Mississippi State with 2 conference losses. So, like I said, guys, it is a wild year in the SEC. We're excited to be covering all these games, and we'll start off with a game that is always a just bounce of ball type game, a game that, you're just looking to see, okay, can one team really just put their foot on the gas the entire time? Because this game looks to be back and forth based on recent history, and we're talking about Arkansas versus Texas A&M in Jerry's World in Arlington, Texas. There, the Fort Worth area. You got 6.5 point favorite Texas A&M without their starting quarterback Connor Wegman, who broke his foot, and Max Johnson now takes over. Arkansas, they're looking to get back Rocket Sanders. He's practiced a little bit more, gotten more reps. Sam Pittman said he was way more confident where he was, the most confident that he's been in his ability to play since that Western Carolina game. So, hey, I think you'll see a little bit of Rocket Sanders in this game. The question is how much and how will he respond? First couple of reps, getting hit, all that kind of stuff. Because, working your way back from injury, I don't care if it's just, something that you're having to grind through, or if it's getting back into game shape or whatever, it can wear on you a little bit. So that is something to watch there. KJ Jefferson has the ability to take over ball games. We know that. We've seen that. We saw that last week against LSU for the Arkansas Razorbacks. He's a very talented quarterback. I'm sure they'll do anything they possibly can in this one. If that means running KJ a lot, they'll run KJ a lot. So, it's kind of Arkansas and Ole Miss are in do or die mode right here. You kind of everything, all the chips are in. You have to go in and try to get this victory. Of course, Texas A&M is, in terms of if they ever wanted college football playoff aspirations, they've already got one loss. But in terms of the conference, they're sitting sitting pretty right now with no losses coming in. They do need to take care of business in this one, though, just to keep the momentum that Jimbo Fisher wants to have around that program. There's lots of really big time recruits that they've been getting on the commitment list here lately. And you got to continue, even with the NIL and all the glitz and glam and all that kind of stuff that's going on now. You have to continue to win, and you got to win rivalry games like this Southwest Classic to keep everybody on board and keep everybody confident with what you're doing. But even more than that, they have a real shot. I don't care if it's with Max Johnson or Connor Wigman. They have the talent on this team to push for the SEC West. Now, people want to say, well, Connor Wigman's out. It's over with, all this kind of stuff. Look at Max Johnson. He has over 4,600 yards in his career and 42 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. He was a full-time starter a couple years ago at LSU before he transferred. He had them on the brink of beating Alabama with not a very good LSU team that year when they had, they had a lot more talent to try to overcome in that Alabama team now. And I think, hey, in a couple weeks when you got Texas A&M hosting Alabama, Max Johnson can be ready. But in this one, he's got to just not try to do too much. Come in and just operate inside the system like he did against Auburn when he came in. It's a little bit different at times, admittedly, when you're just, hey, your number's called. You got to just come in and play ball versus all week and now knowing, hey, all for the rest of the season that you're the guy. So how does the pressure of things get to Max Johnson? Are they going to be able to protect him and let him operate within the system? A very aggressive Arkansas defense under Travis Williams. Now with that 4-man front, they're going to try to bring pressure. Arkansas has to be better on the back end. Adjusted pass defense rankings that, Pick Six Previews puts out each week. Arkansas currently is 66 out of 69th in the Power 5 in adjusted pass defense. They let up some big plays down the field. They got to make sure that they're able to stay with those talented receivers of Evan Smith, of Moose Muhammad. If Noah Thomas is back, we'll see. He had a emergency family. He had a death in the family, I believe, and was dealing with that. So, lots of stuff that's going on there. And we know Anaya Smith is the Swiss Army knife that can do everything. So they have so many weapons that Max Johnson can throw it to, plus his brother, Jake Johnson. So it's going to be tough keeping up with them. But I think Texas A&M will also struggle keeping up with Andrew Armstrong, Isaac Tesla, Luke Haas. I mean, Arkansas proved that they can get a little bit of separation at receiver last week. We know LSU's secondary is horrible, and that's part of the reason Arkansas had a really, really big game passing the football. But when it comes down to it, that does a lot for your confidence. And now we'll see if KJ Jefferson and those receivers can make it 2 weeks in a row right here in this one. So I'm excited to see this game. It is a 12 o'clock Eastern game, 11 Central. And I just want to know which Arkansas team is going to show up. Are we going to get solid offensive line play? Is KJ Jefferson going to be pushing it down the field like he was last week? And then also Rocket Sanders, how much does he play and how effective will he be? So I think those are some things to watch out for in that game. Now, when you talk about Florida and Kentucky, this is one that started out at a 3.5-point spread. It has gone down to a 1.5 spread. Over under is 45.5. 12 o'clock Eastern kick. Mark Stoops says not to worry about that. He has full confidence that Kentucky fans can wake up early and pound some beers. So he thinks that is going to be a rowdy environment, even with a early kickoff there in Lexington in Kroger Field. And then, will UF be able to run on Kentucky? Can the Gators run on the Wildcats? I think that is really the biggest question of this one. And we went in and broke that down with Jordan Rowland of Cats Illustrated, the Kentucky Rivals website, as we had a good interview with him that we have for this pregame show. Go in depth on this matchup, look at both sides. So I hope you'll enjoy that. And then when we get done with that, we'll come back and get to the rest of our picks. So enjoy right here this interview with Jordan Rowland at Rowland Rivals on X on Twitter. He's from Cats Illustrated, and we'll catch you when we get back from that interview. And welcome into this interview with our guest, as we've just mentioned, Justin Rowland from the Kentucky Rivals side. Thank you so much, Justin, for joining us. And as we were just talking off air before we got this rolling, the Kentucky season is finally about to begin, sir.
Finally. For Vanderbilt's not non-conference, but they got a pretty good setup most years with the way they do the non-conference schedule. And every year it makes the Florida game seem like it's for all the marbles because you're usually undefeated. It's a huge game. They had that long winning streak against Kentucky that the Cats have kind of reversed, but it definitely feels like the Super Bowl for Kentucky every year.
I said in a segment earlier this week on our show here on Southeastern 14, I was saying that, hey, not since Bear Bryant was the coach has Kentucky won 3 in a row. That was a 4-game stretch from 48 to 51. Of course, we know Mark Stoops has surpassed Bear Bryant as the all-time winningest head coach. He did that last year at Kentucky. But, man, it feels like in the modern era of college football, if Kentucky were to be able to get 3-0 against Florida in the last 3 years, they would really kind of bump up a notch in that SEC hierarchy, would they not?
Yeah. I mean, it takes a little bit more for Kentucky to convince pollsters and pundits and the offseason talkers that they can duplicate it year after year, but they've been one of the most consistent programs in the SEC since Stoops got it turned around back in 2016. And yeah, I mean, they've done great against Missouri. I think they've won 7 out of 8 against Missouri. The only times they've lost to South Carolina the last 8 or 9 years, they've had their starting quarterback out with an injury. They beat Vanderbilt all but once, I want to say. So the first step for them was to get ahead of South Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. And they felt like they've done that for a little while. And then the next step has been reversing that Florida series, and they hope the Tennessee series. That's been a little slower to turn around.
Absolutely. And then, of course, everybody's chasing Georgia. But if they are able to get by Florida, this will be the second time in 2 years that Kentucky will have gone into Georgia undefeated, ready to try to take on the Georgia Bulldogs in Sanford Stadium. But we got to take care of this one first, Kentucky fans. Don't get the cart before the horse. So key matchups for you in this game, Justin, as you've been I know you've been going through this with Kentucky fans and subscribers on your site and all this all week. What are the main concerns on each side for each of these teams, you think?
Well, I didn't mention Georgia for a reason. That was they haven't quite got to that hurdle yet. But I think Florida has a pretty strong defensive line. They got a couple of defensive tackles that are really big and stout up the middle. I think 105 yards against Utah maybe was the highest rushing total they've given up this year. They pretty much shut down Tennessee, Utah, every team they've played on the ground. And Kentucky's been basically a 70% pass team. They've had those quick perimeter throws, dump off, screens the receivers and running backs as an extension of the running game, jet sweeps, reverses, end arounds. But they haven't really relied on in between the tackles running, especially not that inside zone that they were so known for the past several seasons. And that's a testament to the fall off of the offensive line. They're a little better than they were last year, but this is a team that has to block Florida, especially inside. The interior of Kentucky's offensive line, though improved, has been one of the spottier parts of the team. Florida doesn't give up the run. You got to feel like Devin Leary's going to have to beat him with his arm. And for that to happen, he's got to have a clean pocket. Hasn't always had a clean pocket, so those guys better play a good game.
Now, with that interior, they've moved Eli Cox as of the Vanderbilt game back to center, Jagger Burton back to guard. Is there any chance that they get Kenneth Horsey back? I know Stoops was non-committal in the earlier press conference this week.
I think he's on track. They were originally really scared about that injury. Some people thought that he tore his knee up and he was just going to be done. So they've been cautious in bringing him back. They haven't wanted to put the cart before the horse and get everybody's hopes up. But I think he'll be able to play at least half the game and maybe even more. And he would make a difference because he's so experienced. He's a 6-year player and he's been around for forever. And he's really one of the only 2 depth pieces they have. This line only goes 7 deep when Kenneth Horsey is healthy. So especially for the long run, they need him. But this week, he would make a big difference as well. The 2 guards they have now are Jagger Burton, who struggled at center and who struggled at guard last year, and Dylan Ray, who was a walk-on from West Virginia. He's played at a pretty high level for being a walk-on, but he would certainly be a welcome addition back, and I think he'll play some.
Now,
Also, conversely, on the other side, Kentucky's pretty dang good. I don't care what opponent you're playing. If you're holding teams to 77 yards rushing, that's playing elite defense. I don't care who you're playing against. We know Florida likes to run the football, but they really get things going a whole lot better when they have Kinsley Aguakon in there for him. I know his ankle's a question. What's the latest rumblings you've heard maybe on the other side with Florida's center over there?
I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play. And Eugene Wilson, the receiver who touched the ball 6 times on one of those 14 play drives early in the Tennessee game, is going to play as well. And he was missed last week against Charlotte when they struggled to score in the red zone and had to rely on field goals. They need Kingsley to be not just able to play, but to play at a high level, because when Jake Slaughter was in the game, you saw those snaps skipping off the ground at Tennessee. And, Kentucky fans have seen back in 2017 how that center spot can just derail an entire offense. So I understand they need him to play in such an important game, but I'm interested in just how ready Kingsley is to play. But it seems like Florida is getting some guys back this week.
Well, and to the point that I made earlier, even if he's not 100%, Kentucky's pretty sporty there in the middle with Deion Walker, they have in there. Of course, they've got Keyshawn Silver that transferred over and played guys in the middle. And then we know what they have with Oxendine up front, JJ Weaver, guys like that. What do you think? It can't just be all the competition. What has made Kentucky so good at just not letting any kind of leakage in the run game this year?
I think they've been good against the run. I do think that a lot of it has been the strength of schedule. This is a team that gave up 140 yards per game on the ground last year. So they played good defense, but the run defense wasn't the best part of what they did. They've been good against the run this year, and it makes sense. They've got more big athletic bodies up front on the defensive line than they have had under Stoops. In that 3-4 defense under Stoops, those guys have typically been taking up blockers so the linebackers are free to make all the plays in the backfield and at the line of scrimmage. But this year, you see guys, Khalil Saunders, Deion Walker, Trayvon Ribka, go down the list. They're making plays. The defensive line at Kentucky are making plays for the first time in a while. I think both defensive lines should be confident going into this matchup. I think Florida is going to be tough for Kentucky's offensive line to move. I think Kentucky's going to be one-dimensional. And you see that when Mertz has not thrown these 3-4 yard quick passes, he's been on the run and he's faced pressure. So I think a lot of the game is going to be determined by the mistakes that are created by pressures in the backfield.
And you talk about mistakes, you talk about people who are opportunistic. That would be Andrew Phillips and Maxwell Hairston at the corners for Kentucky. They really, of course, 2 TDs for Hairston last week on pick sixes against Vanderbilt. I feel like being at home for Kentucky, and like you said, if there's any pressure, I don't care how they generate it, whether it's JJ Weaver off the edge or whether it's, blitzing, Trevin Wallace up the middle, things like that. They've got to be precise, or Maxwell Hairston has proven to be, and Andrew Phillips has been, PFF has him graded right underneath Hairston. He's proven to be one of the bigger surprising performers in the league this year in terms of just breakout guys.
Yes. One of the big questions we had about Kentucky coming into this year was the cornerback position, because they lost Carrington Valentine, who's with the Packers now, and Keydron Smith, who had a really good year at cornerback, the Ole Miss transfer. And Andrew Phillips and Max Hairston have really stepped up. I would say Vanderbilt was their first test last week, that speaks to the schedule strength before Vanderbilt. But A.J. Swan actually has some weapons to throw to, and they played really well. The interesting thing about this matchup is Kentucky's defense, Brad White's defense, has typically been a shell. It's designed to take away explosive plays. Well, Florida doesn't even really try for that many explosive plays. They want to go 14 plays up and down the field. So I think we're going to see the corners playing closer to the line of scrimmage. I think we're going to see more safeties creeping up into the box. I think, I don't know about the blitzing, but you're going to have to see Kentucky adjust that typical defensive strategy. But I think these corners this year, they don't have the 6'3", 6'4" corners that Stoops has sometimes had. These guys can actually track routes, stride for stride down the field, contest balls in the air. They're smaller, but they're quicker and they're more athletic. I think you're going to see them playing a lot closer to the line of scrimmage this year.
One thing that Billy Napier really did in that Tennessee game, design-wise, down there in the swamp, is they they're very physical in the run game, but they get you moving horizontally and try to make you misfit gaps kind of and get almost to get Etienne and Montrell Johnson to kind of cut back on you a little bit. How confident do you feel in Wallace and those linebackers to be able to kind of maintain gap integrity? What have you kind of seen out of that, or have you not been able to tell because of the schedule?
Yeah. No, that's a good question, and we have some feedback. Trevin Wallace is their best linebacker, but he's also the one who's most likely to over pursue, who's most likely to make a bad decision. Now, he's been athletic enough in some of these games to dive at somebody's feet and seemingly be out of a play, and then somehow still chase the play down 20 yards later. But they don't want to have to give up those 20 extra yards against Florida. So gap integrity, run fits, playing smart, fundamentally sound, disciplined football is surely going to be a huge part of the game plan this week. And it helps them that Florida just doesn't throw deep. Now, I say that, and I watch them throw deep 10 times, but they really don't throw deep. I think just a few times, and it's going to Ricky Pearsall if it's going deep. So that helps a little bit. The tackling has been up and down this year. I thought they cleaned that up some against Vanderbilt, but it's just going to come down to whether they can stop the run and whether they tackle well on the perimeter. And Tennessee didn't do those things well enough. We'll see if Kentucky can.
And Tennessee also didn't take great care of the football either.
Right.
Joe Milton throwing the ball up in the air. Leary, in fact, actually did that one time against Vandy, just kind of threw it up for grabs one time. Do you feel like, with the being a little bit higher stakes and kind of sometimes when it's a game where, we know that we've got to play this week, do you feel like from a sense of covering practice and stuff like that, there's a little bit more attention to detail? How do you feel about that with Devin Leary and that receiving core and Liam Cohen coming into this game?
Yeah. I mean, Liam Cohen this week said, like, the layups have to be layups. Like, these little quick throws that need to be 9 out of 10, you need to be 90% on those throws. And Leary has done a great job of stretching the defense. He's really put more vertical pressure on a defense, had better pocket presence, done a lot of things better than any Kentucky quarterback, including Levis, that we've seen since at least Mike Hartline back in 2010, maybe all the way back to Andre Woodson in 2007. But there are still those lingering throws that just make you kind of shake your head. And it's like, we've seen the throws this guy can make. Why is this 10-yard out sailing 5 yards over the receiver's head? So there have been little inconsistencies with Leary. Maybe it's a hangover effect from the injury last year. Maybe it's because he's been under duress and getting rid of the ball sometimes. But yeah, he does some things that are really impressive, and he's made some throws that you really didn't expect him to make.
I guess the one thing that I would ask for good and bad, if we look back at the end of this in terms of Kentucky, if we look back at the end of this and Kentucky has won this game, who are you going to point to and say, if you had to look in the future and say, all right, at the end of today, as we're on our game day show here on Saturday, at the end of the day, if Kentucky wins this game, who was the MVP? Who was the guy that was the biggest reason for them to win?
I'd say the offensive line and the receivers played well. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball against Florida. They'll have to run it and do the extension of running it kind of just to keep them honest. But if Leary has clean pockets for most of the night, then I think they have a good shot of winning. The receivers have to play well also. It's the thing about Kentucky's receivers that's been a little deceiving to Kentucky's fans this year. They do have a lot of talent. They're more talented, athleticism, explosiveness, acceleration, whatever physical attributes you want to lay on them. They are better than receivers we've seen at Kentucky in recent history, but that doesn't mean that they are mature, developed, polished wide receivers. Barryon Brown, for instance, great explosive straight line runner. He's going to face the kind of physical press man coverage against Florida that, you can't rely on anything but your route running to get separation in a game like that. So the receivers have to take a step forward in their maturity and start to live up to their billing, because they're going to throw the ball quite a bit, I believe.
And before I ask the flip side of that question, do you feel real quick that this Kentucky offense has held anything out, that they haven't kind of shown their hand through these first 4 games on some stuff? Do you feel like there's some stuff still to throw out there?
Sure. I'm sure they have a couple of trick plays. We really haven't seen the trick plays. I'm sure they got a couple more plays designed to get Barryon in space, be it jet sweeps or end arounds. But the trick plays, I'm sure we'll see some. Liam Cohen, when he was with Kentucky the first time in 2021, he gradually rolled out more of the offense. We didn't see Levis start to run until the LSU game about halfway through the year. Leary's not going to do that, but Demi Sumo Karngbe, for instance, the running back transfer from NC State, wouldn't be surprised if they take a couple of shots on wheel routes or maybe try to hit tight end Isaiah Cummings downfield on a vertical shot. Yeah, they have a lot of diverse personnel sets. And while they play slow, one of the things that Kentucky that makes them hard to defend is they might break the huddle with 3 tight ends and 2 running backs, and then they all are 5. It's a 5 receiver set. So he's very creative and good at creating those mismatches, and I'm sure he's got something up his sleeve.
And then the flip of the question that I just asked you, if this game is over with, it hits triple zeros and Kentucky's on the losing end, what do you think is the position group that maybe failed the most for Kentucky for that result to happen?
Well, I feel pretty good about the defense at every level, and Kentucky's defense usually plays good against Florida, especially at home. So I would say the offensive line probably lost the matchup. You know, I have a hard time believing they're going to be able to move the interior of Florida's defensive line. We haven't seen them run like that, and we've seen how Florida stops the run. The question for me is, what kind of pressure is Leary going to be facing in the backfield? And I could envision a scenario where he's taking some hits as he's throwing, where he's having some passes batted down, he's throwing under duress. I think Florida's front seven presents some challenges that Kentucky's offensive line hasn't seen yet, and they need to have their best game of the season for Kentucky to win.
Yeah, and I'll close it with this right here. This was gold, and I just wanted to know your response to this as things went out throughout the week. I'm going to put this graphic up real quick.
I know what you're going to say.
Great confidence in the people of Kentucky that can get up very early and pound some beers. Why would you disrespect this great state and the great people of it?
He's pretty well an adopted Kentuckian at this point. He's got his financial claws in a bourbon company. He gets Kentucky people. It's a timely quote because they just had a big argument about whether to allow alcohol in the stadium this year. I think they're one of the last SEC schools to finally come around, and fans are terrified that Mitch Barnhart's going to find the videos of drunk fans fighting around the concourse area. But yeah, I'm sure they're opening up the lot at 7 a.m. I'm sure some wish that it was an overnight tailgate situation, but they'll be primed and ready. I do wish it was a night game, though, because it's always a fun atmosphere.
No doubt. Oh, Justin, I can't thank you enough for hopping on here on the SEC Football Game Day show here with us. Tell everybody what you got, how you guys are covering it throughout game day today and what you have going forward with Cats Illustrated.
Jeff Drummond has been a longtime staple on the UK beat, and he's our managing editor. He provides awesome coverage from the field, taking photographs and talking to coaches. We got a game chat on the site. Rolling Rivals, you can interact with me personally, and if you want to read anything about Kentucky, Kentucky.rivals.com or catsillustrated.com. Really appreciate that, Blaine.
Thank you so much. And guys, it's going to be a fun game, and we will catch you later. And we get back to the rest of our SEC Football Game Day show right here on Southeastern 14. All right, and we are back from that interview. Great stuff there with Jordan Rowland and Cats Illustrated. Make sure you guys check him out if you want all your Kentucky information over there. But yeah, excited to see everything that we just talked about with Jordan in that matchup is going to come down to that line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So it's going to be a great game and ready to see it. Georgia. Okay. Georgia's 14.5-point favorites on the road at Auburn. Will the real dogs please stand up? I think is what everybody is asking. Brock Bowers finally got the ball fed to him a little bit more, 9 receptions last week. The question is, are they going to, take the training wheels off for Carson Beck, let him go out and just rip it? Or are they going to play it safe here to start off? Be interesting to see that dynamic. Mike Bobo, the Georgia offense, as they go into hostile territory over there on the Plains. 3:30 kick Eastern, 2:30 Central on CBS. Like I said, this is Carson Beck's first away game as the starter. So that's just a dynamic that you always have to look at. Okay, you don't get the friendly confines of Sanford Stadium there to rely on. Now you've got to face a very, very good crowd, very electric environment when Auburn is playing well over there in Jordan-Hare Stadium, and we know it's always got some kind of craziness. Whether it's a special teams play or a
ball bouncing off somebody's head and getting deflected, and Auburn catching it. There's always crazy stuff that happens in some of these rivalry games for Auburn at home. So we will see how that thing plays out as we go forward. But I think what you're looking at here is Georgia is immensely more talented than Auburn. That defense should be able to limit what Auburn is able to do offensively. Peyton Thorne, Robbie Ashford have not played particularly well. Peyton Thorne, particularly in the pocket, has been a little bit shaky, not being able to go through progressions and really operate that Hugh Freeze offense the way he wants to. Doesn't make it any easier when you have an elite defense coming into town in Georgia, particularly when they're getting guys like Michael Williams back, getting Javon Bullard back. So it's going to be a tall task for Auburn. They have to try to find a way to run the football. They did lose who I think has been their most consistent back this year in Damari Alston. They have Jarquez Hunter there, who is their most experienced back and probably the most explosive back that they have. But, losing Alston doesn't help matters when you're trying to get that run game going against that Georgia defense. Now, if you take sacks out of it, Auburn did rush for almost 170 yards against Texas A&M. However, this, like I said, this is a little bit different style of defense, and we'll see how Georgia does. They've had some issues with their linebackers in terms of eye discipline against play action and against tight ends and crossing routes and things like that. So I'm sure Auburn sees that, and they'll try to do some of that to make Georgia have problems on the defensive end. But overall, at the end of the day, I think Georgia's going to be able to get some people healthy in this game. Ladd McConkey should be coming back offensively. So that would be a big deal there for them. They'd probably get Kendall Milton back to help at that running back position. So I think Georgia's getting healthier in this game, and I think they're going to be able to put their best foot forward. I think this would be the most complete game that Georgia has played. That adrenaline gets going a little bit because you've got a very capable opponent, and you're going on the road. So I think that attention to detail a little bit better. I think you'll see Georgia do well in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if opening drive or two Auburn comes out juiced up just because playing at home, things like that. But I don't think it takes too long for Georgia to settle in. I think Georgia ends up covering this spread against the Auburn Tigers over there. Missouri and Vanderbilt. I think Missouri's going to come out and take care of business in this one. I like the maturity of this Missouri team, and two things that I don't trust about Vanderbilt. I don't trust their ability to hold on to the football. A.J. Swan has turned it over a lot. I think this defense can be very opportunistic for Missouri and is very experienced, even with some guys banged up. I like that Missouri defense over there. And then two, I don't trust Vanderbilt to be able to stop the run, and it doesn't help when you've got the leading rusher in the SEC coming in Cody Schrader, 403 yards rushing. Nathaniel Pete is also good as well. So I think they're going to be able to run the football. They're going to be able to get the ball to Luther Burden a lot, and I think this one's going to get ugly there in Nashville. So give me Missouri to win big. I just don't trust Vanderbilt at this point. I don't even know if A.J. Swan will be the guy that starts this game or finishes it. He's been having some elbow issues. Does Ken Seals get a run over there at Vanderbilt? And if that's the case, maybe Ken Seals takes care of the ball a little bit better, and who knows, maybe they can shorten the game a little bit. But as is, if it is A.J. Swan and the crew that they have over there right now, I like Missouri just to win this one and definitely cover that spread over there. Now let's turn to LSU going to Ole Miss. Is Ole Miss in danger mode? Remember a couple years ago, they went into Tuscaloosa, lost a game that had been really hyped up, really fell flat, similar to this year, and then they went on a run, went on a tear as a program, ended up winning 10 games. Is LSU in that same mode? They got their backs against the wall, so can they hold serve at home with LSU coming in? We know LSU secondary has problems. Was exposed a little bit by Arkansas. The question is for me, okay, you've got three receivers or receiving targets in receivers, Akari Franklin, receiver Trey Harris, and tight end Caden Priestcorn that all came back from surgery for that Alabama game. That is a tall task when your first game back from surgery is against Alabama Crimson Tide on the road against that defense. Now maybe they've got a little bit of the rust off, and they can come into this game with some confidence at Vaught Hemingway Stadium at home. Get that crowd feeding into them a little bit. That'll help pump them up. But hey, it's all about are they able to run the football on this LSU front at all? Can they find ways to do so? Because if they can't, then that doesn't allow this Ole Miss offense to get going, doesn't allow the tempo to get going. I think you got to utilize Jackson Dart's legs more than they did in that Alabama game, and find ways to just keep Jaden Daniels and those talented wide receivers off the field. You got to find ways to extend drives, because the more plays that Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, all those talented receivers over there, plus now the addition of Logan Diggs at running back, and then, of course, you got Mason Taylor at tight end with an experienced offensive line in front of them. The more plays they get, the worse your chances are of holding them out of the end zone, because they are explosive and they are able to put up numbers in a hurry. So the best thing that Jackson Dart and Quinshaw Junkins and Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin can find is somehow find a little bit of a running game, which has been a struggle to this point this year. So excited to see how that one turns out. Then, of course, you have Spencer Rattler going to Tennessee, to Rocky Top, with a big target on his back, as South Carolina and Rattler absolutely obliterated Tennessee last year, hung 63 on them. The over-under on this one's only 62.5, so they're expecting a lot less points in this matchup than they were last year. 7:30 Eastern kickoff there in Knoxville, and Neyland is going to be absolutely nuts. It's a blackout up there. They're wearing the black jerseys. Night game, it is going to be crazy, because all the Tennessee fans have been looking forward to this since their hearts were broken last fall. Is this a Spencer Rattler legacy game? Is this one where, he can, I know he beat Clemson on the road last year, but is this one where, hey, that was kind of unexpected? That was kind of, okay, more of an upset. I know this one technically by Vegas standards would be an upset, but I think everybody knows now, hey, Spencer Rattler is that guy. He's playing the best quarterback the best quarterback in the entire SEC. He's going to come in. So he's coming in not under the radar. He's coming in with the full attention of this Tennessee defense. Being able to get a win like this on the road would cement him as, one of the all-time greats for South Carolina, even with not having the level of team that some of those quarterbacks underneath Steve Spurrier had, like the Connor Shaw, like the Steven Garcia, all those kind of guys. This would make him right up there with those guys, just because South Carolina fans know what this guy is doing without a whole lot around him in terms of run game and offensive line, and Shane Beamer helping him build this program. So it would be absolutely huge. And then Tennessee, all the hopes and dreams of SEC East supremacy are on the line right here. You cannot have another conference loss. So Tennessee definitely knows they've got to come out and get it done. Joe Milton knows he has to come out and get it done. I think that you're going to need to see them be able to run the football in this one, because that is what Tennessee's offense is predicated on, much like I was talking about with Ole Miss. If they can't run the football early, then then more pressure is on Joe Milton. He's not been very consistent as of late. So how do we see Tennessee go about approaching that? I'm excited to see this matchup. It's really going to come down to me for South Carolina's defensive front, their interior of that defense, whether it's Tonka Hemingway, whether it's Stone Blanton in the middle at linebacker. You got TJ Sanders there playing defensive tackle as well, Jordan Strawn on the edge over there. So I'm excited to see how those guys can do, stopping Dylan Sampson, Jabari Small. Will Jalen Wright get to play in this game? He's getting a little bit iffy with an ankle injury, so we'll see. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see the matchup at night. It's going to be a spectacle for sure when these two teams line up. And then finally, the nightcap at 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central, Alabama minus 14.5 at Mississippi State. All the cowbells will be going. Night game, Starkville. So it's a road environment for Jalen Milroe. First road start of 2023 for him. So I'm excited to see how he responds to that, much like Carson Beck going into a hostile environment for Georgia. Alabama ran the football much better against Ole Miss. They utilized Jalen Milroe in a better way, I believe, and I think they'll try to do the same thing, some QB design runs, get it out of his hands quickly, give him some easy access type throws. But Will Rogers and company, they slang it all over the yard against South Carolina last week. I don't think you'll be able to do that against Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold. The best bet, I think, if you're Mississippi State, to be able to match up on the passing game is trying to motion in Tulu Griffin and Justin Robinson and match them up on one of those safeties, whether it's Malachi Moore or Caleb Downs. And they're really good players in their own right, but can you get a mismatch there maybe athletically in the passing game? In terms of coverage ability there, that's really the main thing you can see there. And they got to find some way to run the football on Alabama and try to slow this game down a little bit in terms of eat up some of that clock. Now, on the defensive side, we know what they have in Jet Johnson and Nate Watson, but the secondary has been pretty poor. So Alabama is probably going to have some ability to hit some big plays in this one. But, guys, it is going to be a full day of SEC action here. So thankful that you tune in right here to Southeastern 14 for your game day coverage. We appreciate Jordan Rowland of Cats Illustrated being our guest today and talking about our game of the week, which is Florida at Kentucky. So I'm super excited to see all of these matchups. Thank you for jumping in the chat here and talking things up as always. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check out CHOMPS in the description if you want a 15% discount code for a healthy snack with lots of protein, lots of different flavors. And if you want to partner with us, make sure you send an email to caroline.smith@southeastern14.com, and we would love to work with your business and promote it here on the channel. So thank you so much for tuning in. I am Blaine Gilmer. This has been SEC Football Game Day right here on Southeastern 14. Make sure to be with us tonight. We will have a reaction show tonight live here on the channel. So make sure you're tuned in for that as well. Hope everybody enjoys their Saturday full of SEC football, and we will catch you next time right here on Southeastern 14.